Okay, looks like it is time to get started. Thank you everyone for joining our live lecture today. My name is Isaac and I'll be the lead instructor for the lecture. And today's topic will be mobile development. So we're going to be talking about how you can develop mobile software versus just the browser-based software that you've been acquainted to at this point. So let's go ahead and start by talking about the different kinds of mobile development today. Okay, so native development is where an application is written in a device's native language. Okay, so every device that you have, whether it's Android, iOS, right, you have software that's on that device already. Okay, where your messenger app and your phone app and your contacts, right? And so that is written in a native language, okay? And here's the native languages that are available, okay? And so we've got another kind of development called cross-platform, and this is actually what we're going to be learning about today. And this is where we've got a small website running in a browser shell that has access to the native platform layer. Okay, so over here, as you can see, instead of writing in these native languages, we just write in our browser side, right? HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And then we're just going to use a couple different things in between, such as Cordova, to fulfill the runtime. And we're going to be able to launch a fully functional application, okay? And one of the best parts about mobile in regards to hybrid apps is we can launch for all three platforms using just one code base. Okay, so unlike these native languages. Okay, so if I wanted a native iOS app and a native Android app, I'd have to hire two different kinds of developers. Versus if I want a hybrid Android and a hybrid iOS, I would just have to create a single code base and it would deploy to multiple. Okay. So the technology stack we're going to be using to build our mobile app will be Cordova. Okay, so this is what I mentioned a minute ago. It's the open source mobile development framework that allows us to use standard web technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for cross-platform development. Okay, so all the documentation is here for Cordova. So next, we're going to be using Ionic. And Ionic's going to be building out the user interface of our application. And it's built on top of AngularJS and Cordova. So again, here's another one that maybe you're already familiar with, and we don't have to go out and learn their language. We could just utilize our current skills. So we're going to be using these together to build our mobile app. So a word on development restrictions is that if you want to build a native or cross-platform app for iOS, then you have to have a Mac computer so you have access to Xcode. And Xcode is the program where you write your iOS apps. Okay, so that being said, today we're going to be building an Android app, and that way anyone can follow that, whether you have a Windows or a Mac. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's go to our desktop and let's open up our command line and let's start by installing Cordova. Okay, and we want to install it globally on our machine. So how we can do this is we can say npm install -g Cordova. Okay, and now I'm not actually going to press enter because I already have it installed, but if you don't, go ahead and execute this and it will bring it in accordingly. Okay, so once we brought in Cordova, we can use a command line tool provided by Cordova to quickly scaffold together an app, so we don't have to do everything from scratch. So let's do that. And how we're going to do this is, first, let's change directories onto our desktop. Okay, and then we will say Cordova create hello world com example hello world, and let's go ahead and name it hello world. Okay, now let's go ahead and execute that. Enter here, and we should get that populated on our desktop. Okay, So creating a new project, and perfect. So from here, let's go ahead and change directories into that project. Okay. CD desktop, or we're already on the desktop, CD into hello world. Okay. And then let's go ahead and let's serve this. Okay. And how we can serve this is using a server. So if you don't have one installed, you can install HTTP server by saying npm install -g HTTP-server. Okay. And that'll bring it in globally, install it on your machine. Again, I'm not going to hit enter because I already have this installed. So all I need to do now is I'm just going to say HTTP-server, enter. Okay, and now we can see it's available on these ports. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate there. Let's go ahead and go to localhost 8080. And then if we go to www, we can see that Cordova is live. It's trying to connect to a device. However, it's not going to be able to connect because, of course, we aren't using any, emulators, anything to that nature. Okay, so to add a device, we just need to run a Cordova command. Okay, so let's add Android, just like we were talking about. Okay, so what I'm going to say is Cordova platform add Android -- save. Okay. Platform add Android -- save. Enter. Perfect. And now it's going to bring in all the dependencies and everything we need for that platform support. Okay. So this will take a minute or so. And not only this installation, we're going to be running several of these builds and these installations throughout the lecture. And it's important to note that mobile development is much, much slower than just normal browser development. Okay, so that being said, you gotta be a little more patient when it comes to the approach. So now we've brought that in. We need to now bring in some sort of emulator device. And today I'm going to be using Android Studio to be using an Android virtual device that we can emulate our program to. Okay, so if you don't have Android Studio, you can get it installed by just going to Android. There we go. It is developer.android.com/studio/index, and then you just download Android for your operating system. Okay, and when you download Android, it should come with the Android SDK. Okay, so once you have it installed, let's go ahead and let's open that. Okay, so I'm just going to go in my apps here, and I'm going to open up Android Studio. Okay, and that'll just take a minute to spin that up, and then we'll just have to create a new project. Alrighty. Okay, so while that is spinning up, let's go ahead and let's run Cordova build. What this is going to do, it's going to build our product for a production deployment, and that way we can launch it inside of this Android virtual device. Okay, so we'll just run Cordova build, and I'll execute accordingly. And this will take a few minutes as well. So again, patience is the key here. So while that's going through, let me go ahead and check how my Android Studio is doing. All right, so Android Studio back, it's up and running. So let's go ahead and let's click on Start a New Android Project. Okay, and then we just have to name it. So I'll name mine Coder Camps Mobile. Keep it simple. Okay, I'll leave everything else the same here. Click Next. It's going to ask, the different devices. I'm just going to keep it simple with phone and tablet. And then I'm going to make sure that's the latest SDK. And I'll click Next. From here, I'm going to stick simple. empty activity. We don't need anything fancy at this time. And then I'm going to keep these the same there. We don't need to worry about that at the time. And we'll click finish and let it spin up our new project. Now this as well, it's going to take a minute or two because it's got to configure everything. We'll give it a minute to do that. Yeah. Okay. And as we can see, our build is still running here. So yeah, we'll let that keep going, and we'll let Android keep spinning up our project. Okay, so it looks like it's opening that up for us finally. Okay. So tip of the day, I'm going to close that. We don't need that. And then this is going to look like it's done, but if you look down here, you can see we have two processes running still. So we'll just give it a minute to catch up, and then we can continue and set up a virtual device, which we can then deploy and then launch our application on. All righty, looking good. All right, so from here, we need to go to the AVD Manager. Now, where you can find this is, go up to the top here, and if you hover over this, we can see it says AVD Manager. Okay, so go ahead and click on that. And it's going to pull up a menu for your virtual devices. Okay, so if you don't have one, you can add one really easy by saying create virtual device. And then it's just going to ask you, like, okay, what device brand and size do you want? And you really just go through and you select what you want for your device. And then from there, it's going to save it to your AVDs, and you can just reuse that in the future whenever you need it. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this play icon, and this will tell it, okay, I want to launch this Android device. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on that, and we just got to give it a second to spin up. Okay, so while that's going, we'll go ahead and come back here. We can see that our build was successful. Okay, so now as soon as the Android virtual device comes up, we can easily launch it there, and it'll be ready to go. Okay. So I'll just give this a second here. Finish booting up. And then it should turn on. And if it doesn't, you can always click the power button. But as you can see, it did. So we'll give it a minute to load up. And it's going to load just like a regular phone. Again, it's a virtual device, so it's going to act a lot like one. We'll just give it a minute here. And then we will be ready to run our project. Okay. Any day now. Okay, look at that. Android is starting. So, it's like we're one step closer to our launch. Success. All right, perfect. So now, launching is simple as saying Cordova run Android. All right. So now we just got to sit back and watch the magic happen. And if all goes well, it will take all of our source code from our Cordova app, and it will launch it and deploy it to this virtual device, at which time we will see the result emulated in the browser here for us. All right. Looks like the build was successful. So the install went through, and look at that. The launch has happened. So we give it a second to load in, and we should see a connection screen. Perfect. Okay, so as you remember, when we tried connecting earlier, it said, "Hey, I can't connect because there's no device," right? But now you notice that it says device is ready. Okay, so that means we can actually add an interface and some you know, styling and stuff to our to a page now that we've got the actual app environment up and running. Okay, so this is where Ionic comes into play. Okay, so just know that it is possible to use HTML, CSS, and just those without Ionic. To create interfaces with Cordova. However, it's much more efficient to use Ionic because they've got things ready to go out of the box for you. So makes things much simpler to scaffold. All right, so that being said, let's go ahead and let's close our processes here. And let's bring in Ionic. Okay, so all we need to do to bring in Ionic is, let's go to our command line. We are going to say npm install -g Ionic. Okay, just like we did with Cordova. So that's a global install, and we don't have to install it again. Like before, I've already installed it, so I'm not actually gonna hit enter and execute this. And then once you install it, you're gonna have access to Ionic's command line tool. So if you remember with Cordova, we quickly scaffolded together this Hello World app. Now we're gonna do the same thing with Ionic, except Ionic's gonna take it a step further, okay? Ionic's gonna provide the Cordova logic and that base for us, but it's also going to scaffold together a user interface for us as well. So we're literally gonna have a working app ready to go with Ionic. So let's use the command line tool to install a starter kit for Ionic. Okay, so I'm going to change directories on my desktop first. And then let's go ahead and we will say Ionic start. And then we just have to say the name of the app. Okay, so I'll say my first Ionic app. Okay, hit enter. And we let the install go through. Okay, so here it's asking what kind of Ionic product we want, and you can see this on their website. They've got different kinds, and tabs tends to be the most simple and doesn't have too much added to it. So let's just go ahead and go with the default tabs. Okay, so this install can tend to be pretty lengthy. Okay, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, you've got to consider that it's got to scaffold together everything for Cordova, okay? And then it's also got to do that for Ionic, and then any platform dependencies you want as well. So that being said, that's why this installation can tend to take 4 to 5 minutes sometimes, because you've got a lot going on. And as you can imagine, if we had to go through and create all these files one by one from scratch, it would take a long time to develop a mobile app. However, with Ionic and Cordova, we can just use their command line tools and their scaffolding to quickly put together something that's already up and running, and we can worry about the fine-grained details later. Okay, so we just gotta basically sit back and let it do its thing. You can almost hear the Jeopardy theme music going right now. Da, na, 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 na. But I digress. Okay, looks like we're at 1/3 of the way there, maybe. Okay, now it's going to ask us, do we want to link it? I'm just going to use the default answer here. Okay, perfect. So now let's go ahead, change into our project, and let's boot it up. Okay, so I'm going to say cd, I'm already on desktop, cd my first Ionic app. Okay, now I'm going to open this in my text editor. And I'm using Atom, but if you're using a different text editor, that's okay. As long as you can write code, no worries there. Okay, so go ahead and open this up, and we'll give it a minute to load in all those project files. Okay. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and let's run the command ionic serve. Okay, and this is going to do just what it sounds like. It's going to serve our application into a browser emulator, which we can use to, build our app and our user interface. Okay, so let's give it a minute to run its processes, and then we should be live and ready to, create and update an interface. All right, look at this, perfect. So now I'm gonna go inspect this and use my emulator here, and now we can see we have a mobile app, okay? And you can see it's called tabs because it's got these basic tabs down here, okay? So now let's talk about, well, how is the content being rendered for each tab, okay? So to explore this, we head back to the code. If we look in the source, and from here, we go ahead and let's look at the index.html, okay? We can see that where there is an ion app tag, okay? So this is where our different tab views are being served, okay? And all we need to do is edit those views or add more if we want to, create our own custom page logic. So for example, if I went to Pages, went to Home, and Home HTML, we can see that this message right here, welcome to Ionic, blah, 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 is the same as this message. Okay, so in theory, we should be able to edit that markup, and it should render accordingly in our device emulator. So let's go ahead and let's try it. I'm just going to erase these from H1 that says hello world. Okay, so now let's save all and let's refresh. We can see now this tab says hello world, okay? And it does not say the content that was there before, okay? And so from here, it's very similar to Angular, if you're familiar with Angular, in the way that you run your click events and your, data binding and all that good stuff. So you really, again, don't have to relearn anything or anything new if you already have that base knowledge of Angular, okay? And then from here, it's really, your ball game. If you want to, add, API logic that, you're accessing data, performing different operations with your database, right, using the user interface provided, the options are really limitless, okay? Just know that this is the basic approach to hybrid development is you can simply spin up Ionic Cordova app and then really use your rudimentary front-end knowledge to quickly change out and create something that's yours and customized. And from there, you can, put it on the App Store or the, Google Play and, have it installed and, have people use it. So that's about it for today's lecture. I hope you enjoyed all the material that was presented today. If you have any questions, let's go ahead and open up the floor and let's give you guys a chance to answer those, okay? No questions at this time? Questions, anyone? Mobile development's a little thick, so we sure there's no one has any? Okay, so if there's no questions, then let's go ahead and end the lecture. Everyone, have a great day and happy coding out.